Hello, my friends. Welcome to Tommy Podcast on English Every Day. I'm so happy to have you with me today. And while I record this episode, I think about how each week, each episode, is another step in this journey we are walking together. I don't speak here as a distant teacher. I speak as someone who has stumbled many times, who has made many mistakes, and still decided to keep going. Before diving into today's theme, let me share a comment I got from Juliana. She wrote, "Tommy, my red button didn't want to wake up, but I shook it and clicked. Now it smiles at me every day." I loved that. So, if your button is still a bit lazy, go cheer it up now, because it likes company. Today's theme is special, because it closes an important part of my story. Why? Consistency beat talent in my English journey. For a long time, I believed learning English depended on talent. I looked at classmates who seemed to learn fast and thought, they were born with it. I don't stand a chance. That comparison hurt me, because every time I failed, it reinforced the idea that I had no gift. But over time, I discovered that what really made the difference was not talent. It was consistency. It was the decision to practice a little every day, even without seeing immediate results. I remember one classmate who had much more ease than I did. He understood quickly, spoke with confidence. But you know what happened? He quit halfway. He spent months without practicing, lost his rhythm, and every time he tried again, it felt like he was starting over. Meanwhile, I, who had started stuck, slowly kept collecting small wins. One sentence here, another there, a short practice in the morning, a little exercise on the bus, a made-up dialogue in the mirror. Nothing brilliant, nothing impressive, but consistent. And with time, that pile of small steps took me further than any isolated talent. One scene that really shows this. Turning point happened in a cafe. The barista asked me, "Do you want sugar?" And I answered naturally, "No sugar, please." It was simple, but in that moment, I realized my English was alive. I hadn't waited to be perfect. I hadn't given up for not being talented. I had just kept going, day after day. Say it with me now, as if you were the one ordering, "No sugar, please." That's it. This is the kind of phrase that, when repeated over time, builds real confidence. And that's when I understood something. Talent can give you a fast start, but it's consistency that takes you to the finish line. Talent without discipline is a spark that fades. Consistency without talent is a flame that never goes out. In this episode, I want to share how I discovered this truth, the moments when I almost quit, and how consistency kept me going, even when it felt like nothing was happening. Because if you also think you weren't born with talent, I want you to know, you don't need it to get there. Talking about consistency sounds nice when we look back, but in practice, it's hard. Keeping a daily routine was not easy for me. In fact, it was one of the hardest things I've ever tried. There were days when I felt excited and full of energy. On those days, practicing was a pleasure. But there were also many days when I didn't even want to open my mouth in English. Days when work made me tired, when sleep was heavy, when I asked myself, is this even working? One time, after weeks of practice, I joined a conversation and still froze. I felt so frustrated that I thought about quitting. I remember coming home that day, throwing my backpack on the floor and thinking, what's the point of practicing every day if, when it matters, I still freeze? But it was in that moment of doubt that a simple phrase saved me. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, I can try again. That gave me a little strength. It wasn't about being perfect now. It was about trying again tomorrow. Say it with me now, as if you were looking in the mirror. I can try again. That simple phrase became my daily reminder. Another huge challenge was comparison. I looked at people who learned faster and felt like I was always behind. Once, I went to an English meetup. While some people talked with no effort, I stayed in the corner, silent, just listening. I went home sad, thinking, no matter how much I practice, I'll never reach that level. But then I realized something. I was comparing my Chapter 3 to someone else's Chapter 10. That was unfair. To me, I needed to stop measuring my progress with someone else's ruler and start measuring by my own path. Another difficulty was dealing with lost days. Yes, there were days when I practiced nothing. At first, when that happened, I would quit for weeks. I thought, since I broke the streak, it's over. But later I learned something important. One lost day doesn't erase the whole journey. What matters is the next step. I like to compare it with brushing your teeth. If you forget one day, you don't decide to stop forever. You just brush the next day. With English, I learned to do the same. There was also the temptation to look for shortcuts. I saw ads saying, "Learn English in 30 days," and thought, maybe that's the secret. But every time I tried one of those fast methods, I realized I ended up back at the same point. Consistency has no shortcut. There is no miracle. One clear example was when I bought a course that promised fluency in 3 months. I did it with discipline, but in the end, I saw the real progress didn't come from the course itself. It came from the fact that I was practicing daily. The course ended, but the habit stayed. And that habit is what moved me forward. Of course, there were still tired days. One night I came home exhausted and thought, not today. But while washing the dishes, I looked at the plate and whispered, I'm washing the plate. Short sentence, nothing more. And in that moment, I realized that, even tired, I could keep the flame alive. Say it with me now, as if you were washing dishes. I'm washing the plate. This kind of sentence is simple, but powerful, because it represents consistency. These small gestures taught me that consistency is not about doing a lot. It's about never letting it die. One sentence every day is better than 1 hour of study followed by weeks of silence. And over time, I saw something else. Consistency builds confidence. Even on the bad days, just keeping the minimum practice made me feel I wasn't going backward. At least, I was keeping the rhythm. And that was already a victory. The real turning point came when I stopped seeing consistency as a heavy obligation and started seeing it as a promise to myself. It wasn't, I need to study. It was, I want to keep the habit. That changed everything. The most impressive thing about consistency is that, at the beginning, it feels like nothing is happening. You practice one sentence today, another tomorrow, and it seems like you're just repeating without moving forward. But then, one day, something changes. It's like looking in the mirror when you start going to the gym. In the first days, you see no difference. But weeks later, you notice your body has changed. With English, it was the same. I didn't notice immediate progress. But at some point, I started to see small victories that showed me consistency was working. One of these victories happened in a cafe. The barista asked me, "Do you want milk?" And without thinking, I answered, "Yes, a little." Only then I realized what had happened. I didn't need to translate. I didn't need to plan. It was reflex, and I stayed quiet after, smiling inside. Say it with me now, as if you were ordering, "Yes, a little." That's the kind of phrase that comes from consistency, not from talent. Another time, I was walking on the street when an older lady asked, "What time is it?" I looked at my watch and quickly answered, "It's 5 o'clock." Then I kept walking. A few steps later, I realized what had just happened. Years ago, I would have frozen. Now, the answer came naturally. These moments showed me that consistency builds fluency. Not because you memorize sentences, but because you practice so much that they become part of you. And it wasn't only in automatic answers. I also started to feel less fear. Before, when someone spoke to me in English, my heart would race. Now, even if I didn't know everything, I felt calmer, because I knew I could at least say something simple. One remarkable moment happened in a work meeting. A foreign colleague presented an idea and asked, "What do you think?" Normally, I would have stayed silent, pretending I didn't understand. But that day, I took a deep breath and said, "It's a good idea." It was short, simple, but it was my voice at the table. And for the first time, I felt proud instead of ashamed. Say it with me now, as if you were in that meeting. It's a good idea. That short sentence is worth more than 1,000 excuses. The most beautiful part is that consistency also changed my view about mistakes. Before, every mistake was a reason to quit. Now, I saw mistakes as part of training, because even when I was wrong, I was still practicing. And practicing every day gave me the certainty that sooner or later, I would get better. One night, I was practicing alone at home, making up dialogues. I said, "I'm cooking." Then I added, "I'm cooking pasta." In the middle, I mispronounced pasta. In the past, I would have quit and closed my notebook. But that time, I laughed and said it again. That lightness was the result of consistency. And maybe the most important result was this: English was no longer a heavy obligation. It became part of my routine, like brushing my teeth or taking a shower. I didn't need motivation to practice anymore. I simply practiced. One simple example. Every morning, while opening the window, I whispered, "Good morning." That small ritual made me feel I was building something, even if I didn't notice it right away. Say it with me now, looking out your window. Good morning. This phrase, repeated 1,000 times, is not a waste of time. It's the base of natural speaking. With time, I realized I had gone further than many classmates who started faster. People who seemed talented but didn't keep practicing ended up falling behind. Meanwhile, I, with no special gift and no perfect conditions, kept going. And consistency is what carried me forward. That realization gave me huge strength, because I understood I didn't need to be the best. I didn't need to be the fastest. I only needed to be consistent. If I had to sum up my whole journey in one single word, that word would be consistency. It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't living abroad. What brought me here was the decision to practice every day, even on the days when I didn't feel like it, even when it seemed like nothing was working. I look back and see how many times I thought about quitting, how many times I felt I wasn't capable. But every time I stood up the next day and said one short sentence, I was writing a new story, and that story taught me something powerful. Talent can open a door, but only consistency takes you through the hallway. I'll never forget one scene that shows this clearly. I was at the airport, and a foreigner asked me, "Excuse me, where is the bathroom?" Years before, I would have frozen. But that day, without thinking, I answered, "Over there." He thanked me and left. I stood there, smiling. That short phrase was proof that my daily practice had borne fruit. Say it with me now, as if you were showing the way. Over there, simple, but full of meaning. That's the power of consistency. You don't notice it in daily life, but when you need it, it shows up like a reflex. And this is what I want you to take from this episode and from this whole series of 7 episodes. It doesn't matter if you think you have no talent. It doesn't matter if you think you are slow. What matters is to keep going, because each sentence you say today is a brick in your future. Let me sum up our talk today. I told you how I always felt behind others, how I thought talent was decisive. But then I discovered talent without discipline doesn't last. I also showed you how consistency gave me real victories: automatic sentences, less fear, natural speaking in daily life. And the final message is clear. Being consistent is much more powerful than being talented. And now I want to leave you with a practical challenge. Tomorrow, choose one simple sentence and say it every day for 1 week. It can be, "Good morning," when you open the window. It can be, "I'm drinking water in the kitchen." It can be, "I'm ready," before leaving the house. It doesn't matter which one. What matters is repeating it. I want you to prove to yourself the power of consistency. Then come back here and tell me, which sentence did you choose? I want to know, because maybe your choice will inspire other listeners to start too. Before closing, let me remind you of something important. You don't need to be fast. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be consistent. Consistency builds reflexes, confidence, and fluency. If this episode made sense to you, wake up the red button. It doesn't like to stay alone, and it's your way to make sure you don't miss the next episodes coming. I'm very grateful to have you with me in this series. 7 episodes, 7 pieces of my story, 7 lessons I wanted to share as a friend. And I hope that, at some point in this journey, you felt you are not alone. Keep this final sentence with you. Talent may impress, but consistency transforms. I'm Tommy Podcast from English Every Day. Bye-bye.